What if I told you that a man fed dozens of innocent people to a creature living under his house for 10 years and the police found his wife alive in that same crawl space speaking a language that doesn't exist on Earth? This isn't fiction, this actually happened, and what you're about to hear will make you question everything you think you know about what lurks beneath our homes. Blair Elderman's confession to police in 1973 was so disturbing that authorities initially thought he was insane until they discovered something in his crawl space that proved every horrifying word was true. March 3, 1963, Atlanta, Georgia. Blair Elderman woke up to warm, humid breath on his face and the most horrific smell he'd ever encountered. When he opened his eyes, something impossible was staring at him just inches away. A 4-foot-tall dark creature with intelligent eyes that seemed to be deciding whether to kill him or spare him. But this was just the beginning of a nightmare that would consume the next decade of his life and cost dozens of people their lives. 1 week earlier, Blair had come home from work to find his wife Carol missing, but her car was still in the driveway. Her belongings were untouched, her purse was still there, but she had simply vanished without a trace. The police barely investigated, assuming she had left her husband, but Blair knew better. His wife would never leave without taking anything with her. She was an orphan with no family to run to, and her friends hadn't seen her. Something terrible had happened to her, but Blair had no idea that the answer was literally right underneath his feet. After a week of sleepless nights and endless worry, Blair turned to alcohol to numb the pain. He drank himself into a stupor that night, hoping to forget about his missing wife for just a few hours. But when he woke up to that creature breathing on his face, his life became a living hell. The thing stood there for what felt like hours, just watching him, analyzing him. Blair noticed his closet door was open and the crawl space entrance was wide open too. He realized this monster had been living underneath his house, and now it had revealed itself to him. The creature suddenly scurried back into the closet and disappeared down into the crawl space, slamming the door shut behind it. Blair should have run, he should have called the police, he should have burned the house down, but something strange happened. Despite being terrified, he felt an odd sense of calm, as if the creature wasn't trying to hurt him. If it wanted him dead, he would already be dead. So Blair did something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He decided to coexist with the monster. The next evening, when Blair came home from work, he heard something scurrying through his house, heading straight for his bedroom. His heart stopped when he realized what he had seen the night before wasn't a dream or a hallucination. This thing was real, and it was living in his house. Blair had moved his wife's heavy dresser to block the crawl space door, but when he entered his bedroom, the dresser was back in its original position and the crawl space was open again. The creature was far stronger than it looked. For a week nothing happened. Blair went to work, came home, cooked dinner, and tried to live a normal life while a monster lived beneath his floorboards. He could have moved, he could have left town, but something kept him there. Maybe it was denial, maybe it was curiosity, or maybe the creature had already begun to influence his mind in ways he couldn't understand. Then everything changed on a Saturday evening that would mark the beginning of Blair's transformation from victim to accomplice. 2 young men in shirts and ties knocked on his door, representing their church and asking if he'd like to hear about their faith. Blair was in a good mood that day. He had been fishing and caught dinner, so he invited them inside. He told them to wait in the living room while he hung up his fish on the back porch. But when he walked back inside, he heard muffled screams coming from his bedroom. Blair ran toward the screams just in time to see the legs and shoes of one of the young men disappearing down into the crawl space. The other man was nowhere to be found. The front door was still closed and only their religious books remained scattered on the living room floor. Both men had been dragged into the creature's lair, and Blair knew they were never coming back up. This should have been the moment Blair called the police. This should have been when he grabbed a weapon and went down into that crawl space to save those men, or at least recover their bodies. Instead, Blair sat on his couch and cried. He knew if he called the police and they didn't find the creature, he would be blamed for the disappearances. So he made the most evil decision of his life. He decided to do nothing. Days later, police cars appeared in the neighborhood questioning residents about the missing young men, but they never came to Blair's house. He thought he had gotten away with it, but the creature had other plans. A few weeks later, Blair woke up to find words scribbled in blood on his bedroom wall that read more. The message was clear: the creature was hungry and it expected Blair to feed it. When the creature appeared next to his bed that night, it didn't leave after a few minutes like before. It stood there for hours staring at Blair with those intelligent eyes, and Blair finally understood the deal. He was not the creature's victim, he was its partner. In exchange for his safety, Blair would provide the monster with fresh victims. The alternative was joining the bodies in the crawl space. What Blair did next defies all human decency and morality. For 10 years, whenever someone knocked on his door, instead of turning them away, he would invite them inside. He would make an excuse to go to the back of the house and wait 15 minutes. When he returned, the person would be gone and the crawl space door would be open. Blair never asked questions, he never looked down into that space, he simply closed the door and continued with his life. Mailmen, delivery drivers, religious missionaries, traveling salesmen, neighbors asking to borrow something, anyone who was unlucky enough to knock on Blair Elderman's door became food for the creature. If too much time passed without a victim, the word "more" would appear in blood on Blair's wall and the creature would visit him nightly until he provided another sacrifice. After 6 years, the police finally knocked on Blair's door asking about a missing person last seen in his neighborhood. They searched the house, they looked in his closet, but they never thought to check the crawl space. Blair answered all their questions and they left satisfied that he knew nothing about the disappearance. By year 10, Blair was mentally broken. It had been 3 months since anyone had knocked on his door, and every single day he woke up to more written in blood on his wall. The creature visited him every night, standing beside his bed for hours. Blair knew it was only a matter of time before he became the next victim, so he made a desperate decision. He drove to the police station and confessed everything. The detectives thought Blair was insane until they searched his house. In the crawl space they found bloodied, torn clothing from dozens of different people, possibly more. But they found something else that shocked them to their core. Blair's wife Carol was alive. She had been in that crawl space for 10 years, unable to move, unable to speak, and when they pulled her out, she was speaking a language that no linguist on earth had ever heard before. Carol couldn't see or walk due to severe muscle atrophy, but the strangest thing was this unknown language she was speaking. Experts from around the world listened to recordings of Carol speaking, but no one could identify what language it was. It didn't match any known human language, living or dead. After months in a mental institution, Carol suddenly began speaking English again and her eyesight returned. When authorities interviewed Carol, she revealed the truth. Blair hadn't kidnapped her, something else had. She was sitting in her kitchen drinking tea when she heard a noise from the bedroom. She found the crawl space door open, and when she bent down to look inside, something grabbed her by the neck and dragged her down. For 10 years a creature kept her alive, feeding her raw meat and an unknown liquid while she listened to her husband walking around above her, never knowing she was just feet away. The most disturbing discovery came when crime lab scientists examined soil samples from the excavated crawl space. They found traces of DNA from multiple victims and something else that terrified them. They discovered scat from a creature that was not human and does not exist in any known animal kingdom. Something had been living under that house, something that science cannot explain. Blair Elderman took his own life in his jail cell 2 weeks after confessing. Carol was cleared of any wrongdoing and released from the mental institution. She later left Atlanta and was never heard from again. The house was bulldozed and the land was sold. A new house was built on the same spot, and a month after a family moved in, they mysteriously vanished without a trace. The creature is still out there and it's still hungry. Every time someone goes missing from their own home, every time a family vanishes without explanation, you have to wonder if another Blair Elderman made a deal with something that should never exist. The question that will haunt you long after this story ends is this: what would you do if something was living under your house and the only way to survive was to feed it your neighbors? Let me know in the comments if you think Blair was a victim who had no choice or a monster who chose the easy path over doing what's right. And if you want to hear more true stories that will keep you awake at night, make sure to subscribe, because the darkness is full of secrets that are waiting to be told, and some of those secrets might be hiding right under your own home.